Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at King in Black, Issue 1. This is a 5-part miniseries from Marvel Comics from 2021. It's written by Donny Cates, pencils by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer inker, Frank Martin color artist, Clayton Cowles letterer, covered by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer, and Frank Martin. Assistant editor was Danny Kazem, editor Devin Lewis, executive editor Nick Lowe. Cover's pretty good, does relate, but it's mainly just a pinup. So the King in Black has arrived, the Avengers set out to try and stop him and evacuate major areas, and while the initial volley of exploding Kree ships that they had in the upper atmosphere left over from Empire did stop some of the monsters, it didn't stop anywhere near enough. Eddie locks Dylan in this safe room that Spider-Man had left over from his encounters with Ezekiel. Probably should have been footnoted. The X-Men show up to help out too. No sign of Thor though, and even worse, Knull has some old Celestials that are wrapped up in symbiotes. Sentry shows up to help, and that does not go well at all, and things are looking really grim for the heroes. It looks like the Avengers are down. Venom decides to try and do something kind of rash, and it backfires horribly, and Eddie is in a very bad predicament at the end of the book. Now, the cliffhanger ending was good, very comic book, I'll give them that. There is a really good timeline and explanation of various things that happened in the back of the book, as well as a checklist for the reading order. I'm not going to read most of that stuff, but overall, the checklist and the background information were pretty helpful. There's a good timeline there to kind of keep readers up to date that may have missed some stuff. But if you haven't been reading the Venom series up till now, there's going to be a lot of missing context as to how things got here. But overall, it was actually a pretty good issue. It's a real bummer issue too. A lot of bad things happened to a lot of heroes, but it looks like one hero may have actually died, and it really left off on a good cliffhanger. This was actually a surprisingly good issue. I was really worried after reading Venom Beyond, but this one has been pretty solid, and at $6 I expect it to be a lot worse, but it's actually not bad. Paper quality's good, cover quality's real nice, shockingly. Not a big fan of Stegman's art. I think it looks a little boxy at times, but Venom looks really cool, so I'd recommend this. I thought it was pretty good so far. Hopefully the next issues are good, and we'll see how they go, but for now this is a recommend. It's a pretty thick issue with a lot of story going on, so there's a lot in the issue, and that really surprised me because Marvel's been really lax on the actual storytelling, where they tend to pad things out with a bunch of unnecessary scenes. There's not a whole lot of that in here. A little bit, but not nearly what Marvel usually does. So I'm going to recommend this. So far, the miniseries is off to a great start. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at King in Black Issue 2. This issue was written by Donny Cates, pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by J.P. Mayer, Frank Martin on colors, VC's Clayton Cowles letterer, cover by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer, and Frank Martin. This cover's pretty good actually, and it does relate to what's going on. So after the events of last issue, Eddie is in very bad shape. Spider-Man couldn't get to him in time to save him, and in fact they have to flee. Human Torch gives them some great cover so that they can get out of there and stabilize Eddie. But Spider-Man has to go break the news to Dylan, and that's actually a really touching scene. Meanwhile, the remaining heroes from the Avengers, FF, and, well, the X-Men aren't really helping anymore. They're trying to figure out what to do. Namor shows up and offers to help, despite the fact that nobody invited him per se, except maybe Sue Storm, but they do need his help, and he's experienced in fighting in darkness, which is something that a lot of the heroes apparently aren't. So Iron Man comes up with a plan, which means that they're going to have to recruit some people they wouldn't normally work with, including Dracula, the Black Tide, and even the Kingpin. Iron Man's plan also involves taking over one of the symbiotes using the Extremists, which was a pretty cool throwback, but things don't go quite the way that everybody expects. We're left with a really shocking cliffhanger ending that should be pretty interesting to where it's going. Now, overall, this was a really solid issue. The art's good for the style it's in. It's not my favorite, as I've said many times with the Venom series. The story is really solid, and even the cover's good. Coloring's great. Lots of good use of the characters, good references to past storylines, that sort of thing. A lot of good character appearances. Didn't have any real problems with that. My only real complaint with the issue is they do this thing where they like to damage Spider-Man's mask and have little tufts of hair poking out and not letting him change the mask because it's silly. Hee hee. It's not silly, it's stupid and annoying. So I'd have to say this was a solid issue, and I would absolutely recommend it. It was a very good installment in the series. It made me want to buy the next issue, which thankfully I already have. So this is all around a recommendation. Thought it was was fun. There is a preview for Venom 32 in here as well. So that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at King in Black issue 3. This is a miniseries from Marvel Comics, written by Donny Cates, pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by J.P. Mayer, colors by Frank Martin, letters by Clayton Cowles, cover art by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer, and Frank Martin. Assistant editor was Danny Kazem, Devin Lewis editor, Nick Lowe executive editor. So after the events of the first two issues, it's not looking good for the heroes. Spider-Man and Wolverine have to escort Dylan out, and Dylan starts blasting away some of the symbiotes. He frees Captain America, and in a really stupid scene, he catches Cap's shield. Sure, why not? But then Knull takes a personal interest in what's going on and tries to take out Dylan. Thankfully, Thor finally shows up from whatever he was doing and goes one-on-one with Knull and does really well, actually, for quite a while, but the tides change quickly in these kind of events. The symbiote that Iron Man freed is a bit more cooperative finally, and that ends up in a Celestial and Celestial battle, and at the end of the issue, we have a cliffhanger ending as somebody new enters the fray. Overall, this was a really good issue. I liked it better than last issue. My major complaint is I had to buy 2 copies of this because the first copy I got was missing over half the book. Great quality control you got there, Marvel. At least the paper quality is slightly better than usual. Cover quality is way better. So for the $5 cover price, it's not a bad purchase. Unfortunately, these go for about 8 to 10 now, as I unfortunately found out. And I'm really mad that I had to buy 2 copies of it because they don't have any real quality control apparently at Marvel. But otherwise, I will recommend it. It has been pretty good. This issue is definitely the best one so far, and we'll see how the 4th issue goes. But I don't think it's worth $8. It might be worth 4 or 5, but beyond that, if you're really looking for this book, I would say get it in trade. That seems to be the best way to enjoy a lot of the miniseries these days, is to get it cheap in trade paperback, because it's going to be more cost effective that way. So if this is something you're thinking about picking up, get the trade paperback, and I would absolutely recommend it. It's been pretty fun, but you're going to enjoy it a lot more if you've been reading the Venom series. So heads up on that. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out, you can share it on your social media or go down in the description and click on one of the support links down there. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at King in Black issue 4. It's part of the 5-part miniseries from Marvel Comics, written by Donny Cates, pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by J.P. Mayer, Frank Martin color artist, Beastie's Clayton Cowles was the letterer. I have the regular cover by Ryan Stegman, J.P. Mayer, and Frank Martin. Assistant editor was Danny Kazem, editor Devin Lewis, Nick Lowe executive editor. So Dylan is trapped in the hive with Knull, who is basically trying to lure him, and somebody else is poking around trying to get into his mind, and Dylan uses his abilities to free a bunch of the heroes and injure Knull in the process. Now the person getting in his mind is Jean Grey, who apparently the X-Men decided, they should actually get involved at some point other than just one team. So they let one of the Omega level mutants actually do something. Nice of the Ethno State to do that. In the meantime, Dylan is doing all the heavy lifting, and Jean manages to probe into Knull's mind while he's injured and learn of the opposite of Knull, who's been alluded to throughout this storyline, that there is in fact an opposite of him. And that dichotomy allows one of the cosmic heroes to show up and grab the light and bring it into the earth. Now this Enigma creature is one that's actually been around the Marvel Universe for a very long time, and we've seen way before Knull, and they've just given him a larger role. And we are left with a pretty dramatic cliffhanger ending that looks really good. Overall, this was actually a pretty good issue. I think it was a little bit overly dramatic, trying to use a lot of players at one time, but it is a pretty fun issue, and it does make use of a relatively obscure character that hasn't really been a major player in the MCU in a long time, and was always critically underused. So pretty cool to see that. Was it worth $5? I didn't feel cheated. I was a little annoyed that the X-Men are now looking like major players, even though they haven't done crap through the this entire thing. And now Jean Grey just shows up and is like, I'm here to save everybody. Yeah, well, you guys have been cloistered away in your little fatherland for so long. A little better late than never, I guess. You sent one little team and haven't done much beyond that, so thanks. Otherwise, it was a pretty solid issue, and it looks like the fight against Knull is finally going in the direction of the heroes. So we'll see how it plays out, but until then, I'll recommend this. I think this is going to be better read as a trade paperback than as single issues, and it'll probably be a lot cheaper too to find a discount copy of the trade than try and track down all the single issues. But we'll see how it plays out. I thought the cover was okay, but most of these X-Men don't really do anything in here. Jean does all the heavy lifting. Wolverine's barely even in the book. Scott's in it for maybe a page. Same with Storm. Magneto's not in here at all. So having the X-Men on the cover's kind of deceiving. But like I said, the interior art's okay. Nothing major to complain about there. Perspective shots were real good. So soft recommendation, like I said, get it in trade rather than track the individual issues down. It'll be higher quality. They are using better cover paper on the books, but that doesn't really justify it when you're going to end up spending $25 on the single issues most likely, so you might as well just buy the trade paperback. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, you can share the video on your social media or check out the links below for other ways to support me. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at King in Black Captain America issue 1. This is a 2021 one-shot from Marvel Comics written by Danny Lore, art by Mirko Kolak, Stefano Landi, Roj Antonio, and Nico Leon. Color art by Eric Arciniga. Letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. Cover art by Salvador LaRocca and Guru EFX. Assistant editor was Martin Biro, editor Alana Smith, Tom Brevoort, executive editor. So Bucky and Falcon are trying to do something. It's a little vague at first, but they have an idea to shoot fire out of Falcon's wings and use some stun grenades to fight off some of Knull's creatures. And that's when Captain America enters the fray. This takes place after King in Black issue 4 and before issue 5. So Cap is trying to help out, but he is delayed by self-doubt and these seeming hallucinations. And that's because he had been under the influence of Knull, and it's causing him a lot of self-doubt for some reason, very unlike Captain America. And that's kind of the crux of the story, is him overcoming this voice in his head, and he needs Bucky and Falcon to validate him in order for that to happen. It's an okay written one-shot. The art is a real mixed bag. A lot of this is very amateur hour and shouldn't be in a Marvel book. It should be in like a Dynamite book or something like that, one of the smaller publishers, because it is just all over the place. Some pages and panels look really good, others look very, very weak. But overall, it's not even remotely necessary for the furtherment of the King in Black storyline. It's just a cash grab at $5, which if you pay anywhere near $5 for this, you're getting ripped off. This is a dollar bin book easily. Like I said, the writing's okay for what it is, which is about Cap overcoming self-doubt. It's just out of character for Captain America to be doing that. And he talks a lot about how he's a symbol and people use that for their own nefarious ends. It's all very navel-gazing and stuff that's been overdone quite a bit when Ta-Nehisi Coates was writing Captain America, as well as lots of other modern writers. So this is just a completely unnecessary book that was just a quick cash grab for Marvel. Cover's really good. Beyond that, I don't think it's worth reading. It's a very unnecessary installment in the King in Black storyline, like so many of the ancillary books are. So I would say skip this one. Captain America is relatively heroic at the end, but overall it seems out of character, and it's just a uninspiring story. Not a necessary installment in the mini-series for King in Black, and not particularly something I would seek out. And that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, or share the video on your social media, or both. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at King in Black Spider-Man issue 1. This is a 2021 one-shot from Marvel Comics, written by Jed MacKay, pencils by Michelle Bandini, inks by Michelle Bandini and Elisabetta D'Amaco, colors by Eric Arcaniga. There's a backup story by Jed MacKay with art by Alberto Albuquerque, colors by Rochelle Rosenberg. Letters for both stories was VC's Joe Caramanga. Cover art by Carlos Gomez and Jesus Bertov, assistant editor Danny Kazem, editor Devin Lewis, Nick Lowe, executive editor. I like the cover, it's really good. Doesn't really apply here, but it is a good cover that sort of relates. So Spider-Man's having a little panic attack and blaming himself for everything, but we quickly get past that, thankfully, because navel gazing is boring. And Spider-Man goes to save some old lady that he thinks is being abducted by one of the dragons, but it turns out to be Reptile, who's a relatively new hero that they're trying to make into a thing. And they decided to have a little team up to get this old lady, Mrs. Volkov, to safety. Peter and the kid both agree that they're not really going to be able to do much about the big colossal threat, but they might be able to save this one old lady and a few other civilians. So they're trying to get her to Staten Island, and they end up on a ferry that is being attacked by a giant dragon thing, and a Reptile turns into a big fish monster because he can turn into dinosaurs, and the people on the ferry hook up a electro lance to try and stop the thing. The backup story is just Reptile being promoted a little bit, talking about himself. There's no reference points as to where some of these story points happened, so I assume they're in like Avengers Academy or something like that. But obviously this is a prelude to the Reptile book series that came out in 2021, and that's really obvious with the backup story. It's pretty worthless, and the art's garbage. Primary story, the art's okay. It definitely has a very manga influence, especially when you see Mrs. Volkov. She looks like a stereotype old lady from Japan, and she kind of talks like a stereotype as well. Even though her name sounds strangely Russian, she seems to talk like an anime old lady. Overall, the main story was pretty good. I thought it was pretty fun. It gets a little navel gazing at the beginning, but thankfully they get past that and get into the primary adventure aspects. So I thought it was good, but it's not $5 good. Not even close. Pull this out of a dollar bin, $2 at the most. Beyond that, it's not worth anywhere near the cover price, but at least this one was a lot better than the Captain America one shot. This has a complete story and it's pretty fun, even though it's obviously to promote Reptile's series that was coming up at the time. I don't find that character all that interesting. His power base is kind of cool, but he seems a little annoying and very much one of the inserts that you see too much of in modern comics. So I'm not really interested in Reptile, but I did find this issue to be quite fun as far as like a dollar bin book would go. So beyond paying a couple bucks for it, you can skip it. It's not really essential to the King in Black storyline at all, but it is a fun sidetrack that takes place between issues 4 and 5 of King in Black. So like I said, if you find it cheap, then I'd recommend it. Beyond that, you could just sort of ignore it. That'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods, or you can share the video on your social media too. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at King in Black issue 5. This is a miniseries from Marvel Comics written by Donny Cates, pencils by Ryan Stegman, inks by JP Mayer and Ryan Stegman, color art by Frank Martin and Jason Keith. VC's Clayton Cowles did the letters. Ryan Stegman, JP Mayer, and Frank Martin did the cover. Assistant editor was Danny Kazem, Devin Lewis, editor, Nick Lowe, executive editor. So the Silver Surfer shows up to help fight Knull, and it looks like some of the heroes are back and they're ready to jump into action, but Venom shows up with his newfound power base, and he combines Thor's hammer with the Silver Surfer's surfboard through the magic of storytelling and proceeds to go completely insane on the bad guys. And he also goes after Knull, of course, which leads to a big knockdown drag out where Eddie even has to fight a Sentinel. Thankfully, with his newfound cosmic powers, he is able to equal Knull quite handily, even going beyond that, and we get a really solid resolution. We even get some follow-up on Blade and the vampires, and things kind of return to status quo except for Eddie, who now has some serious power. He also has to kind of deal with Dylan and the corruption that is within him before the power that was in him leaves. But now he has a new role, and it's interesting to see where this might go, but it was a good resolution. I enjoyed the book. I thought it was fun. It wasn't the greatest thing, but it was pretty solid, and I thought the miniseries was a lot of fun, but you really really have to have read a lot of the Venom books in order to get the most out of this. Otherwise, it'll probably feel like a pretty fun book, but you'll miss a lot of the storyline for what led up to all of this if you haven't been reading all 35 issues of Venom and probably Absolute Carnage. And probably a lot of one-shots as well. But I thought it was good, and they did a real good job bringing Eddie back and possibly another hero, and utilizing a somewhat lesser-known hero, but they changed him pretty significantly for the purposes of this story, and I think it's not a bad change, but we'll see how they use it in the future. I don't want to give too much away because that is kind of a major spoiler for issues 3 and 4. But yeah, I thought the book series was good, and I thought it was worth a read, but like I said, if you're not going to read the entire run of Venom for this era, then it's really not worth it. You're not going to get the most out of it, and the story beats and impacts will have a lot less effect, and a lot of the elements you're going to just be like, what is this about? So to leave you with more questions if you don't read the Venom 1 through 35 as well. On that front, I would say try and get this in some kind of omnibus or trade paperback collected work with the Venom stuff as well, and that'll make it a little bit more interesting. Unfortunately, there are some pretty weak storylines in the Venom series, so that's a bit of a trade-off. But like I said, I enjoyed this. I thought it was good, and I have read the Venom books, so I think it really had a much bigger impact by having read those books. So take that for what you will. And the art is pretty solid throughout. If you like Stegman's art, this is some of his better work. I thought it worked really well for what they were doing. But that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, share it on your social media, and subscribe if you haven't. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.